My name is Lucy, and about 2 years ago, I married the man I thought was the love of my life, Dave. We had a great relationship, but things started getting sour when my mother in law moved in with us. She's always been a bit of a control freak, but living with her was a whole different story. She would constantly complain about me to Dave, making up stuff about how I don't keep the house clean or how I can't cook properly. I tried my best to keep the peace, but mother in law was like a tornado, and soon my marriage felt like it was falling apart. My husband, who I thought would have my back, started believing everything she said. He didn't even bother asking me for my side of the story. It's like he was under some spell. We argued a lot, and I could feel him slipping away from me. His mom kept poisoning him against me day after day, and he just absorbed it all. One day, mother in law brought home this girl, Eliza. She was the perfect daughter in law in mother in law's eyes. She could cook, she could clean, and she listened to everything mother in law said. Before I knew it, my husband was spending more time with her, and mother in law kept pushing how good they looked together. Then the bomb dropped. Dave asked me for a divorce. I was shattered. He told me that he couldn't live with me anymore and he was going to marry Eliza as his mom had suggested. I begged him to think it through, but he was convinced. We got divorced and he married Eliza within a month. I moved out, got my own place, and tried to pick up the pieces of my life. I was devastated. But slowly, with the help of friends, I began to rebuild my life. I got a new job, started going to the gym, and even began reading again, something I hadn't done in years. Fast forward to 1 year later, there's a knock at my door. I opened it, and to my shock, it's Dave. He looked like a mess, unshaven, eyes puffy. He was nearly in tears and begged me to just listen to him. He said that he got sold into marrying Eliza by his mom, and he never realized it till it was too late. I was so overwhelmed with emotions. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, but another part was still the girl who loved him dearly once upon a time. I let him in, and he started pouring his heart out about how his mom manipulated him and how horrible his life had been with Eliza. According to him, mother in law and Eliza got into fights too, and mother in law tried to control their marriage just like she did with ours. He said he understood now what he had put me through and how much he regretted it. Now, I don't know what to do. A part of me feels sorry for him, but another part of me is furious. I built my life from scratch after he shattered it, and now he's here expecting me to take him back because he got a taste of his own medicine? Update 1. After he left that day, I was an emotional wreck. The old feelings were resurfacing, and I was torn between rage and compassion. I decided to talk to my best friend, Jenny, about the whole situation. She has always been my rock, and I knew she would give me sound advice. Jenny was furious when she heard about Dave showing up. She reminded me of how broken I was when he left and how hard I worked to rebuild my life. She told me that taking him back would be like allowing a tornado back into my life, especially with his manipulative mom still in the picture. I knew she was right, but part of me still cared for him. I decided to meet with him in a neutral place to have a proper conversation. We met at a coffee shop, and he looked even worse than the last time. He told me that he had moved out of his mom's house and was staying with a friend. He said he couldn't take the manipulation anymore and admitted that he was blind to how controlling his mom was. He apologized repeatedly for not believing me and for abandoning me. Honestly, I felt sorry for him. I remembered the man I fell in love with, and it was like I could see a glimpse of that man again. But at the same time, I was not ready to just let him back into my life. I had changed. I was stronger and more independent. I wasn't sure if there was a place for him in my new life. I told him that I needed time to think and that we both needed to consider if getting back together was what we truly wanted or if it was just the familiarity and comfort we were seeking. After our meeting, I felt more confused than ever. I went home and began journaling my thoughts, something my therapist had suggested. I listed the pros and cons of possibly getting back together with Dave. I realized that my list of cons was much longer. I spoke to my parents about it, and they were surprisingly calm. They said that they would support any decision I made as long as it made me happy. Right now, I'm at a crossroads. I still care for Dave, but I also love the new life I've built for myself. I know I need to make a decision soon, but it's so hard. Update 2. After my last update, I kept reflecting on my life, my feelings for Dave, and what I really wanted. I even started attending counseling sessions to work through my emotions. Then, one evening, as I was heading home from work, I got a call from Dave. He sounded extremely emotional and told me that he wanted to meet with me, that it was urgent. My gut told me to go, so we decided to meet at a park nearby. When I got to the park, Dave was already there. He had a stack of papers with him. As I sat down next to him, he handed me the papers. They were divorce papers. He told me he had filed for divorce from Eliza and that it was the first step in making amends for the terrible decisions he had made. We talked for hours that evening. He opened up about how he was attending therapy as well and trying to detach himself from his mother's influence. He said he missed the life we had and was willing to do whatever it took to earn my trust back. Reddit, I was overwhelmed. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, but there was also a lot of pain and regret. Part of me wanted to hug him and tell him everything would be okay, but another part was terrified of going down that road again. We parted ways that evening with an agreement to take things slowly. We would attend counseling, both individually and as a couple, and try to rebuild our friendship before jumping into anything. Over the next few weeks, we started spending more time together. We attended counseling sessions, went out for coffee, and started talking about our dreams and hopes like we used to. It felt nice. But there was always this nagging voice in the back of my head telling me not to let my guard down. Then, one day, we ran into his mom at the grocery store. She was with Eliza. I felt my heart sink. Dave tensed up, but he held my hand firmly. His mom gave us a cold stare, and then, to my shock, Eliza approached us. She looked at Dave and told him she didn't blame him for wanting a divorce. She said she was also manipulated by his mother and wished us both the best. After that encounter, Dave and I decided to take a weekend trip together to really talk about our future. During the trip, we had a heart-to-heart conversation. We realized that while we still cared for each other, maybe we were trying to chase something that was lost. The trust was broken, and while we could try to rebuild it, we had both changed as people. We decided that maybe it was best to support each other as friends. He needed to work on himself away from his mother's influence, and I needed to continue building the life I had started. So here we are. We're not back together, but we are in each other's lives as friends. It's a bittersweet resolution, but I think it's the best one for both of us. Update 3. After Dave and I decided to stay friends, life went on. We both continued our individual counseling, and I threw myself into my work and hobbies. Meanwhile, Dave moved to another city for a new job opportunity. We kept in touch through texts and occasional calls. Then, about 2 months ago, I was invited to a friend's wedding. I was excited but also a bit anxious as it would be my first time attending a wedding since my divorce. At the wedding, something unexpected happened. I ran into an old friend, Michael. We used to be close in college but lost touch over the years. We ended up spending the entire evening catching up and reminiscing about the good old days. As the night went on, I realized that I felt genuinely happy and carefree for the first time in a long time. Michael asked me out for coffee the next day, and I accepted. We started seeing each other and soon began dating. Meanwhile, Dave heard about me dating again through mutual friends. He called me one night, and to my surprise, he sounded very supportive. He told me he was genuinely happy for me and hoped that I found the happiness I deserved. He also shared that he had started dating someone in the city he moved to and things were going well. Around this time, my therapist suggested that it might be a good time to seek closure with my past and make peace with everything that happened. After giving it some thought, I decided to write a letter to Dave's mom. In the letter, I expressed my feelings and how her actions had affected my life. I also wrote that I forgave her and wished her well. I sent the letter and felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. Last week, Dave called me and said that he was in town and wanted to meet up. We decided to meet for lunch. When I saw him, he looked happy and content. We shared stories about our new relationships and even laughed about some of the ridiculous things that happened during our marriage. He then handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from his mom. It was a heartfelt apology for everything she had done. She wrote that after receiving my letter, she realized the error of her ways and had started attending counseling herself. She thanked me for being the bigger person and for helping her see what she needed to change in herself. As Dave and I parted ways, we hugged and made a promise to always be there for each other as friends. We both found happiness and peace in our new lives, and we could look back at our past without pain. Now I'm sitting here writing this update with a heart full of gratitude and contentment. I never thought I would be in this place after everything that happened, but life has a way of surprising us. I want to thank all the Redditors who have followed my story and offered advice and support. Your words have been invaluable in helping me find my way through the storm. I'm excited for this new chapter in my life, and I hope that anyone reading this who may be going through a tough time knows that there is light at the end of the tunnel. NAH, no a-holes here. You made a super mature decision, Lucy. It's fantastic that both you and Dave realized that you needed to work on yourselves before jumping into anything. That's real growth. And hats off for being the bigger person and sending this letter to his mom. The fact that she responded positively is like the cherry on top. This is like one of those rare AITA stories with a wholesome ending, sending you tons of positive vibes for your new relationship and your new life. NTA, not the a-hole. Oh my God, Lucy. I've been following your story since your first post. What a roller coaster, honestly. I think you showed incredible strength and grace through all of this. I'm not sure I could have been that mature. It's sad that Dave didn't see his mom's true colors earlier, but better late than never. He's not entirely blameless, but he seems to have genuinely changed. As for his mom, I'm cautiously optimistic about her apology, but only time will tell. You do you, girl. Next story. Hi, Reddit. I'm John, a 35-year-old divorced dad with two amazing kids, Emma 10 and Mike 8. My ex-wife Lisa and I separated 5 years ago, and she's now remarried with a 2-year-old son named Max from her new marriage. I need to know if I was the a-hole in a recent situation, so let me explain what happened. After our divorce, Lisa and I agreed to share custody of our kids. We usually keep things civil, and our priority has always been the well-being of Emma and Mike. We both live in the same town, so the kids switch between our houses every week. They've adjusted well to the arrangement, and they love their half-brother Max. So here's where things went south. Last Friday, I got a frantic call from Lisa. She told me there was an emergency with her husband's family and she needed to go out of town immediately. She asked if I could take care of Max along with Emma and Mike for the weekend. My immediate response was no. Max is not my child, and I didn't think it was my responsibility to look after him. Lisa got really angry and told me that I was being heartless. She argued that Emma and Mike might want to spend time with their half-brother, and as their dad, I should consider what's best for them. I told her that she should have thought of a backup plan for situations like this, and that I shouldn't have to pick up the slack for her new family. We ended the call on a very sour note. After hanging up, I started to feel a wave of guilt wash over me. Emma and Mike were in the room and had overheard the conversation. They asked me why I didn't want Max to stay with us. I explained that while I love them very much, Max is not my child, and it's not my responsibility to look after him, especially on such short notice. Emma, being the wise soul that she is, told me that Max is still family because he's her brother, and families should help each other. This made my heart sink. I started thinking maybe I was being too harsh. However, I stood by my decision because I believe boundaries are important. My relationship with Lisa ended when we got divorced, and I feel that I have no obligations towards her new family. But then there's the part of me that thinks about my kids and what they feel. So here I am, torn and confused. I want to be a good dad to my kids, and I don't want them to think I'm mean or don't care about their family. But at the same time, I don't want to set a precedent where I'm expected to step in for Lisa's family emergencies. I need some perspective, Reddit. I don't know if my refusal to babysit Max was me setting healthy boundaries or if I was being a heartless ex-husband. I want my kids to be happy, but I don't know if I should be making sacrifices that involve my ex-wife's new family. Update 1. It's been a few days since I last posted about my situation with my ex-wife Lisa and her request to babysit Max, her son from her new marriage. I received a lot of feedback and advice from you guys, and I appreciate it. I've got some updates to share. First off, I spent the weekend thinking a lot about what Emma, my 10-year-old daughter, said about Max being family. It made me reflect on my own relationships with my siblings, and I realized that I didn't want my kids to miss out on having a close bond with their half-brother. So I decided to have a talk with Emma and Mike. We sat down and I asked them how they felt about Max and if they would want to spend time with him, even if it meant that I had to look after him sometimes. They were both very honest and told me they liked Max and considered him their little brother. They also said they wouldn't mind if he stayed over occasionally. This chat with my kids was a turning point for me. It made me understand that my initial reaction was perhaps more about my issues with Lisa than about Max. I realized that by refusing to babysit Max, I might be putting my personal feelings above my kids' relationships with their sibling. Taking this new perspective into account, I decided it was time to have a serious conversation with Lisa. I called her up and asked if we could meet to discuss things. She agreed, albeit cautiously. We met at a local coffee shop. The atmosphere was tense initially, but I took a deep breath and started. I told her that my kids had expressed that they wanted to have a relationship with Max, and I didn't want to stand in the way of that. However, I also made it clear that we needed to establish boundaries and communicate more effectively. I suggested that we should have a clear plan for emergencies, and she shouldn't assume that I can always take care of Max. She listened and surprisingly agreed. She apologized for springing the request on me so suddenly and acknowledged that it was unfair. We then talked about how we could work together for the sake of the kids. One thing we agreed on was to occasionally have Max over at my place when Emma and Mike are there, but only if it's planned in advance and not used as a regular babysitting option. Walking out of the coffee shop, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. I realized that this wasn't just about Max. It was also about showing my kids how adults can communicate and compromise for the sake of family. I'm not saying that everything is perfect now, but I feel like we have taken a step in the right direction. My kids are happy, and that's what matters most to me. I'm still cautious about how things will unfold, but I am open to giving this new arrangement a try. Update 2. The new arrangement we made, where Max would occasionally come over when Emma and Mike were with me, seemed to be working well at first. The kids loved spending time together, and I felt good knowing that I was fostering a bond between siblings. However, one weekend, Lisa called me saying she needed me to take Max because she and her husband had made plans. I reminded her that we agreed only to do this in emergencies and that this didn't qualify. She got upset and accused me of going back on my word. I stood my ground and she eventually hung up. A few days later, Emma and Mike came back from school upset. They told me that Lisa had been speaking negatively about me to them, saying that I don't care about their brother Max and that I'm selfish. I was livid. I called Lisa and confronted her. We ended up having a heated argument. It became clear to me that Lisa was not respecting the boundaries we had set. I decided it was time to talk to a lawyer and see if there was something I could do to protect my kids from this kind of manipulation. The lawyer suggested that we might want to look into modifying the custody agreement to include some communication guidelines. I wasn't sure, but I said I would think about it. In the meantime, I had another talk with Emma and Mike. I explained that sometimes adults have disagreements, but it doesn't mean that we don't love them. I told them they can always talk to me if they feel confused or hurt by something. Now, here's where things take a turn. One evening, Lisa's husband, Mark, came to my house unexpectedly. He looked troubled. He told me that he wanted to apologize for any stress that the situation with Max might have caused me. He explained that he had a serious talk with Lisa about the importance of co-parenting and respecting boundaries. Mark also said that he had no idea that Lisa had been speaking negatively about me to the kids and was shocked when he found out. He assured me that it would not happen again and that they would find alternative options for Max if any emergencies arose. I was taken aback by Mark's sincerity and openness. We ended up having a long conversation about our experiences as parents and how challenging it can be to navigate blended families. We agreed that it's essential for us to communicate and work together for the kids' sake. After Mark left, I felt like maybe there was hope for a more peaceful co-parenting relationship. I decided not to pursue any legal actions for now, but to give this a chance. I also had a conversation with Lisa later, and she apologized for her behavior. It feels like we're starting to build a foundation of trust and cooperation. I am cautiously optimistic. Update 3. So, after the incident with Lisa and the turnaround with Mark, things were going fairly smoothly. We all tried to communicate better, and the kids were spending time together without any issues. However, Emma and Mike started growing really attached to Max. They would talk about him all the time and always look forward to seeing him. One day, Emma came to me and asked if Max could come over for her birthday party. I was hesitant at first, but decided that this was a special occasion and it could be a good opportunity for family bonding. The day of the party arrived and everything was going great. Max was there and the kids were having a blast. Then something unexpected happened. Lisa arrived to pick up Max, and she was clearly emotional. She took me aside and started talking about how she realized how much this family meant to her and how she wished things had turned out differently between us. I was taken aback and didn't know how to respond. I simply told her that the past was the past and that we should focus on raising our children and fostering their relationships. After the party, I started thinking about the family dynamics. My kids were growing so attached to Max, and I didn't want them to be heartbroken if things went south again with Lisa. I decided it was time for me to take some steps to ensure stability for them. I called a family meeting with Lisa and Mark. I explained my concerns and suggested that we should consider having a formal agreement regarding the kids' interaction and communication guidelines. To my surprise, they both agreed. We worked together with a mediator and put together an agreement that outlined the terms of our co-parenting and the interaction between our children. It was a detailed document that took into account holidays, emergencies, and general communication. I also took this opportunity to connect more with Mark. We started sharing parenting experiences and even gave each other advice. A few weeks later, I realized how much this whole situation had changed me. I was more open, understanding, and willing to compromise for the sake of the kids. My relationship with my own children also improved tremendously. They were happier, and so was I. In the end, I feel like this journey was about more than just whether or not I should babysit Max. It was about understanding what family means and how sometimes, even though it's complicated, it's worth putting in the effort for the ones you love. Thank you, Reddit, for being a part of this experience. Your advice and support has been invaluable. My kids have a better family life because of the steps we all took together. I hope my story can be a lesson for anyone going through a similar situation. Family is what you make of it, and sometimes it takes a village. Wow, John, what a roller coaster of emotions. But I must say, you handled it like a champ. I was skeptical at first about you not babysitting Max, but it was more about setting boundaries. It's amazing how you all turn things around. This is a classic example of how communication can solve most problems. Kudos to you for putting the kids' interests first and also for being open to mending fences. I'd say NAH. Things were rocky, but everyone seems to have come to their senses. John, as someone who has a blended family, I can totally relate. It's not easy to navigate these waters. Lisa overstepped, but it was a wake-up call for everyone. You, sir, show tremendous growth. It's heartwarming to see that you put your differences aside for the happiness of the children. You even worked things out with Mark, which is commendable. My verdict is NTA for not wanting to babysit initially, but you're a total hero for how you handled it in the end. Your kids are lucky to have you. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.